Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Bruin Dash, the UCLA show on Dash Sports TV. My name is Sam Connon. I'll be your host once again today, and joined again by my co-host Jack Perez. Jack, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Sam. It's perfect weather here in Westwood as always, but UCLA is coming off a loss, so not doing too great there.
Yeah, we'll get around to all that. USC beating UCLA at the Galen Center on Saturday night. Bruin Cody face down low and ended up USC victory. We'll get it all down for you. And then we'll also get around to National Signing Day last week for UCLA football. Not too many new names to add. There have been some transfers over the past couple of weeks that Chip Kelly is able to poach from other Power 5 programs, so we'll break those down. And then we'll get back to UCLA basketball. They're playing Washington and Washington State this upcoming weekend, so we'll break down some keys to victory and talk about how those games went last time the two teams matched up. So if you have any thoughts, comments, questions on any of those, make sure to leave them in the comments. If you're watching live, Jack and I will get around to as many as we can. And without further ado, let's get started talking about that USC game. Trojans beat the Bruins 66-48. It's a pretty big margin of victory considering how close all of UCLA's games have been most of this year. And it was a bad offensive night. It was an iffy defensive night, bad rebounding night, just all around not the prettiest picture. So, Jack, give me your first impressions a couple days later, whatever it is, your breakdown of how things kind of blew up so bad.
Yeah, well, obviously, first of all, the biggest thing that happened was both Jalen Hill and Cody Riley were out for the game. Jalen Hill for personal reasons. Cody Riley looked like he had maybe a minor injury on his leg. We don't know exactly what happened there. It wasn't mentioned earlier in the week, so it seems like that was something that popped up kind of recently. And when you're going up against USC, especially against the Mobley brothers, you're going to have a tough time no matter who is down low. But when you're having to start Kenneth Nwuba and you got Mac burning his red shirt to come off the bench and play in his first ever collegiate game at the Galen Center, it's going to be a rough night. Now, both those guys did great. They were pretty admirable, honestly, in how they performed, but they didn't have the same experience the other two guys had. Kenneth doesn't really play as often. There are times where he gets off the bench. When Jalen Hill and Cody Riley got in foul trouble in the Arizona game earlier this year, he got to play a few minutes, but he just doesn't have that experience. And then Mac, obviously, coming off the bench to play in his first ever collegiate game, he looked like he was 17, 18 years old in his first collegiate game. He played well. He got some good rebounds, put up a few points, but you could tell it was just a ginormous mismatch. And if that's going to happen, Mick Cronin either needs to start to play guys out of position, maybe play a Jaime Hawkins Jr. at the 5, like I've been saying, and go super small, or maybe try to guys at once. I don't know if it's reasonable to try to expect both of them to perform very well, but you got to try something different out there.
Yeah, and I don't really blame Cronin for the loss against USC in terms of the big man rotation, because we've been talking for weeks about get both Hill and Riley on the court at the same time and see what happens, especially going up against the Mobleys. But we don't really know when Cronin got the word that Hill and Riley wouldn't be playing. It was only about an hour before tip-off that the news broke about neither of them being available. Cody Riley had an ankle wrap on. Hill was personal reasons, so we don't know what the timeline was. I can't expect him to throw together a whole new game plan and take two bench warmers pretty much and start something fresh and new on such short notice. But the thing is, Etienne and Nwuba, even though Kenny didn't score at all, really was not much of a factor on offense. He played 17 minutes or 13 minutes. Etienne got a lot more of the playing time. But between the two of them, the concern was the Mobley brothers. Yeah, Evan, Isaiah, and probably the number one pick in the draft, Evan. And they didn't really do all that much offensively. I mean, they had 9 points and 5 points. They were efficient. They both shot over 50%, but USC, that's not how USC beat you. USC beat you by having Ethan Anderson go for 19 and Taj Eddy go for 16. And the two of them combined were 8 of 15 from 3. And that's what killed you, because the rest of the Trojans were 1 of 11 from 3. which is a little more on par with how UCLA shot from deep. It was those two guards, the starting and off the bench in Anderson, and they killed you. And as much as I want to blame this on Hill and Riley not being around, and sure, I think UCLA would have rebounded a lot better, and maybe Mobley, the Mobleys would have combined for 4 blocks and 20 rebounds if Hill and Riley were in. But it was the guards. It was the guard play that killed you. It was they had the zone defense in the first half that was working pretty well, but didn't really make too much of a difference, even when they went back to it a little bit in the second half. The Trojans 3-point shooting, they got hot, they killed you, and UCLA didn't have any shot makers who can compete with that. You can't score 48 points and expect to win. Mick Cronin said it after the game, and it makes sense. This is the worst offensive outing they've had in 6 years. So it doesn't really matter that the Mobley brothers weren't perfectly defended. They were kind of neutralized. They weren't the problem. The problem was shot making and stopping the opponent's guards, and that just really sank them on Saturday.
Yeah, and honestly, the UCLA defense didn't look that bad, especially against the USC offense. Yeah, Ethan Anderson kind of lit it up eventually, but I mean, you can survive giving up in the 60s to USC. It's if you can't get into the 60s or the 70s, like they've been able to do consistently for a lot of this year. UCLA obviously under Mick Cronin is supposed to be a defensive team, but they were very offensively efficient. Now all of a sudden, Cody Riley and Jalen Hill are out for one game, and it seems like everything's combusted. Tiger Campbell couldn't get anything going because it looked like, when your two best pick and roll guys are out, Tiger Campbell looked a little lost out there. Johnny Juzang, while he scored the most points and had a ton of rebounds, he just wasn't shooting efficiently at all. It seemed like Mick Cronin gave him the ultimate green light. And while, yes, sometimes that can lead to a huge Johnny Juzang game, or, if that happened last year with Jake Kyman, and sometimes he can get going. David Singleton, that can happen with him. But if one guy is consistently shooting the ball and missing over and over and over again, you have to try to find new options, try to find new ways to break down teams. Now, like we've said, it was a game plan that wasn't really able to be developed. But after halftime, you got to do something. You got a few minutes to go in there, try to readjust something, try something new. It didn't look like UCLA did that. It looked like almost for the entire second half, they'd given up and just resigned themselves to saying, look, we've lost this game. Let's just move on to the next one, which at some point you can do, but it's at USC. It's a rivalry game. Just put your head up high, try something new, try something different. If you're going to lose, go out in a fun way, go out in a way that at least excites your fans, or that it shows that you're trying something. Don't just give up and just accept the loss at that point. It's okay to lose to USC, especially away. It's only the second loss in conference for the season. They're still tied for first place with USC up there. It's okay to lose, but it's not okay to lose in a fashion that makes it seem like you're done with the game. Just go out, give it your all. And look, to their credit, they did give a lot of energy, but on Mick Cronin, not in Mick Cronin's defense, you have to try something new at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think Juzang got a little trigger happy in the second half for sure. But he had that and one almost halfway through the second half and made it a 7-point game with 13 minutes left. That's very winnable. UCLA has won those games this year. And then it's Anderson 3, and then USC hits a free throw. They keep going to the line because they get in the double bonus. UCLA has sloppy fouls. Anderson hitting more threes. Honestly, USC stretched their lead from 7 to 17 in the second half, and eventually 18 on only free throws and Anderson threes. That's really it. They didn't really, until Mobley in the last 2 minutes, they didn't even have any layups. It was threes and free throws, and that killed you. And that's because of undisciplined defense by the inexperienced guys, whether it's Muba or Etienne, which is understandable. I get it. Having those guys pick up fouls down low and having Juzang and Hawkes be so aggressive on the offensive boards to try to make up for that, you're going to get more fouls. So it's frustrating when USC gets the line twice as much as you, but it was for a reason. They earned their way to the line. That was part of their game plan, or at least some mid-game adjustments by Andy Enfield. So good for them, good for him. It's really just the threes and the free throws that killed you. And I don't want to say I'm not taking all the blame off Cronin, because you should go in and try to win every game, and I think he did. That's my main point here. But it really, it just wasn't their night. I hate making it that simple. I hate kind of having that excuse, but this UCLA team is better than they showed on Saturday. I think once they get Hill and Riley back and they play USC in the regular season, that should be a better representation of what this team is. I'm not saying they're definitely better than USC, and this game doesn't count because they didn't have Hill and Riley, but not having that element and just having your absolute worst shooting night of the year combined for they were not going to win this game. And if you just look, you said so the scoring numbers usually have been pretty good this season. When UCLA scores 70 or fewer points in regulation this year, they're 4-4, and they score over 70 points, they're 9-0. So last year it was hold people under 72 and you win. This year, score 71 points and you win. So it's kind of a transition from that defensive approach last year to offense, and when the offense isn't going, an offense-heavy team can't win. And that's what this team is so far.
Yeah, and we've seen UCLA be a lot better than that USC game. I mean, those games against Arizona is the games against Colorado, Utah. Even when they had just lost Chris Smith, they looked better. So, hopefully Cody Riley's not out for a long time. Hopefully Jalen Hill's not out for a long time. But they'll be able to adjust. I mean, it's nice that they're able to go up to the Washingtons this weekend. It's nice that they avoided Oregon twice already, 3 times maybe, however many times they rescheduled one of those games, and both of those Oregon games got canceled last week. It's nice that they haven't been put in this scenario where it's just a loss after loss after loss, like a lot of Mick Cronin's season was last year before the Pac-12 play really started. They have that confidence and they know they're able to adjust. It's just time for them to show it. And the next week shouldn't be as tough, but they can't fall into complacency. They can't fall into the blame game of, Jalen Hill was out, Cody Riley was out, Chris Smith has been out for a while. You can't fall into that. They'll find a way to adjust. And when they're able to, they're going to come out better for it.
Yeah, and I think we kind of said it after the Stanford loss. That was maybe a kind of a rude awakening, a good loss that shows you can't win all these close games. And a loss like this shows you that, okay, maybe you do need someone you can rely on, and it's probably not Johnny Juzang. And he had some good shots. He was not a total black hole, but when you take 21 shots and get 13 points, that's bad. As a team, they had a time in the first half where they missed 6 in a row, and then another time in the first half where they missed 7 in a row. There was a 6-minute stretch, a 7-minute stretch where the only guy who scored was Juzang. It was just a mess, a total blunder. Just forget about it, move on. This team is not that bad on offense, but they are going to have to learn from that. It was a pretty putrid performance, I'll say that. So going from a tough loss against USC, let's take a break from basketball and move on to UCLA football. National Signing Day was last Wednesday. UCLA closed the day with the 29th best recruiting class in the country. Now they're sitting at their 4th in conference and 30th overall in the country. So it's the best that Chip Kelly's had outside of his first year when it was mostly more guys. So it's not bad. There are things to take away from this. Guys like Quentin Somerville, 4-star DN who committed a couple weeks ago. That's a good pickup. And then the Michigan running back who transferred, Zach Charbonnet, Cam Johnson, a North Texas safety, got a guy from Old Dominion, a corner, Caleb Ford-Demont. There's a lot of guys, a lot of faces. Are there any that stand out to you, Jack? And overall, what do you think of this recruiting class and this transfer class?
Yeah, you just mentioned one of the ones that I think is going to be quite a big impact is Cam Johnson. We saw last year that Chip Kelly really was able to use his graduate transfers on the defensive side of the ball well. And I'm looking forward to seeing if Cam Johnson can continue that trend. Overall, the passing defense looked a lot better last year for most of the season up until the last 2 games where they got lit up. But with a full season, especially with Brian Norwood being able to develop the guys, hopefully during spring camp, develop that defense. Jerry Ozanaro is still there somehow. I don't know what's happening with that. But yeah.
Clock's ticking.
We'll see. We'll see if he's able to adjust anything with that. But I'm really excited for him. Overall, though, this shows that Chip Kelly's back on his way. He didn't have the greatest recruiting classes up at Oregon, especially early on before they were a winning team. And we know that he can develop guys that are 3 stars, 4 stars into being really good players, really impactful players. The biggest thing, though, is that he kept a lot of guys that possibly could have transferred away or that possibly could have graduated. And he really proved that this team is going somewhere. Yes, they went 3-4 last year. And yes, you and I talked a lot about how they were disappointing in a lot of scenarios. But this Bruin team looks like they're an 8-4, 9-3 squad. You know, your only tough non-conference game is LSU, which you get in the Rose Bowl. You get early on in the season, and LSU wasn't even a world beater last year. I mean, once they lost Joe
from it.
Yeah, and once they lost Joe Burrow, they look like, other than their wins against teams like Florida, which was a big shock, they looked like a very beatable team. You know,
it wasn't just Burrow. They lost like 90% of their production from their championship game. This is a whole new look.
Yeah, so they don't look like the LSU of the 2010s. They look like a new team that's pretty beatable, especially at home. Your conference schedule should be pretty easy. I mean, we don't know exactly when everything's shaken out, but I mean, you should be able to beat most of the South. They looked good against most of the South last year, except in the Colorado loss for the first half and in the USC game for the last quarter. So I'm expecting this to be a pretty good team. Sam, who are you excited about that we got, and what is your outlook for this team?
When it comes to outlook, I know you were talking about LSU. I don't know how recently you've played like the Madden connected franchise mode. You remember that? How when you do a created coach, you pick like a style. There's like the strategist and the team builder. Well, Ed Ogeron is the motivator. You remember that. Mm-hmm. So he's not going to bring in all these like amazing guys or develop and scheme his way to wins. That's not really how LSU got so good that championship year. He's just going to take good players and make them play their butts off. And I don't know if LSU has that. So, hey, maybe UCLA can go 3-0 in non-conference this year. It'd be a funny role reversal considering they went 0-3 in Kelly's first 2 years in non-conference, and they obviously didn't have any chances to play non-conference last year. But that's an expectation. You should go at least 2-1. You're playing Mountain West schools. You're one of the better teams in the Pac-12 South, and you should be able to match up well, coach well, and beat out those inferior teams, even if they are kind of good group of 5 teams. You should be better than that. When it comes to this recruiting class, this transfer class, the top recruit is Quentin Somerville, really good 4-star D end. I think having a pass rush on the outside, having an edge rusher like him is really going to help. You lose Osa Digizua in the middle, and that's a part of your defense you're really going to miss. But last year, the Bruins really thrived with bringing pressure off the edge, and I think having a talented guy like Somerville is really going to help. Overall, though, the position group and the players I'm most looking forward to is the running back group. We've talked about it a ton. We've talked about it in January and December and whenever. Jashun Merle, really, really good. He is physical but dynamic. Kind of, he's a running back, but he's more like an all-purpose back. He's a receiver. He runs. He has lateral movement, the quickness, whatever it is. He's a 4-star by some people's consideration. He's really good from Alabama. And then you add in Zach Charbonnet, who's 6'2", 215, transfer from Michigan. Honestly, you lost Joshua Kelly 2 years ago. You lose Dimitri Felton this past year. And I think you're going to have the best running back stable that you've had in maybe 6-7 years, whether since Paul Perkins or something. Maybe even better than that, because you have Charbonnet, you have Britton Brown, you have Jashun Merle, you got Kaz Allen. This running back group is insane. They're talented, they're fast, they're athletic, they're smart, they're experienced. I think it's a recipe for success for Kelly. It's going to be great for Dorian Thompson-Robinson to work with good running backs again, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do. Because, I mean, Charbonnet, when he was a lead back for Michigan, had over 700 yards in 2019, 11 touchdowns. Wasn't much of a receiver, but still. You have Charbonnet and Britton Brown as 2 absolute power backs. And you have Jashun Merle, who kind of does it all, and Kaz Allen's a receiver. That's going to be fun to watch. I can't wait for that.
Yeah, and you didn't even mention Keegan, who was the third back
Deacon
for
Jones
last year. Martell Irby, who the year before was pretty good. I don't even know if he'll be able to get a touch this year. So that's going to be a big thing for Chip Kelly to develop, especially because you're losing Brandon Brown after this year. It's great that he came back, but you're going to have to develop someone under him. And there's lots of guys to choose from. There's lots of competition, and they're going to have to really, really come out into play. But I think the best thing for this UCLA team is not just how many running backs coming back, but how many people are coming back in general. I mean, you're only losing 2 guys. The NFL draft, about over 90% of the production for this team is coming back. You obviously get Dorian Thompson-Robinson back. You get a lot of leaders in the locker room back. They should be a team that doesn't fall to anyone. Lots of other teams are losing star guys left and right. I mean, USC across town is losing a ton. I don't know who they're going to be able to bring back, but they won't have the firepower that they had last year. So this is the time that you have to pounce and really make a push for not just a Pac-12 South title, but a Pac-12 championship.
Yeah, definitely. And specifically the returning production, they had, it was Bill Conley from ESPN, had an ESPN Plus article that came out last week saying UCLA has the 3rd most production returning in the entire country. And on offense, or second most, and on offense, it's 3rd most in the entire country. Part of that, you got DTR coming back, you got backup Chase Griffin coming back, so that's good. You got you lose the Njokus, which is all right. They were talented, but never really got too much action on the field. You got Coda, you got Kyle Phillips, you got Frenia, who people were talking about might grad transfer, but it looks like he's sticking around. And then the running back group is great, as I said. I think the best and most experienced group on this team is the offensive line. You're returning the entire unit. You had a grad transfer who's coming back. And then you brought in Benjamin Roy, Garrett Giorgio as recruits. Also Noah Palelli. Is that it? Thomas Cole. A lot of really good offensive linemen. Kelly and he said back at the early signing day that he wanted to get to a certain number of scholarship offensive linemen. They've been pulling guys over from the defensive line for a couple of years with his boss Tagaloa or Antonio Maffei. So you got Maffei plus all last year's starters, plus these 4 new recruits on the offensive line. That's going to be one of the best units in the conference. And I think this offense is going to be the most efficient and productive in the Pac-12, the entire Pac-12. USC might get more yards and points because they're running more of an air raid. We'll see. But this offense, top to bottom for UCLA, should be, honestly, they should be a top 10 in the country offense. I have really high expectations for them. Doesn't mean they're going to meet those expectations, but like I said, high expectations.
But anything top 10, top 15, top 20 is great. That's something you should be shooting for, because the defense should probably take another step forward, especially with the consistency from last year. If the offensive line stays healthy, they'll do great things. They kept DTR pretty clean last year. They kept Chase Griffin pretty clean last year. And other than the USC game, center goes out, you have to get a new guy in. With this depth, they seem like a unit that can honestly, like you said, probably be one of the top ones in the Pac-12, if not the country. And both DTR and those running backs will benefit greatly from that. I don't know if they'll have as many explosive playmakers as a team like USC will, and possibly because of the air raid offense, USC's playmakers seem a lot better. But if they're able to be efficient, even keep the ball for quite a while, give the defense a rest, this is going to be a really, really exciting Chip Kelly team to watch. But like we said, there's just no excuses this year. With all the guys coming back, with being Chip Kelly's 4th year, with there hopefully being a full spring training camp, summer training camp, you already know your schedule. There's no excuses at this point.
Yeah, definitely. And there were videos of them. They're getting back in the gym, in the workout room on Wasserman Field with the training staff, or whether it was just players only. I'm not sure, but they were back there today. There's a video on Twitter shared out by the training staff of the team. So that was good to see. It's good to see they're around and they're getting ready for next fall. So another couple months left until the season starts, obviously, for UCLA football. It's a while, but hopes are high, stakes are high. We'll see what happens. Now, just last couple minutes here, we'll go back to UCLA men's basketball. They're going to head off to the Washingtons this weekend. They're playing Washington State, and Washington blew out Washington State by 30 last time they played, and Washington was last place in the Pac-12 and gave him a pretty tough ride. So we'll see what happens this time. Could it be more of the same? Maybe a role reversal? What do you think, Jack? What are you expecting this weekend, and what are the keys to victory and making sure that you kind of run away with these this weekend?
Yeah. We don't know if Jalen Hill and Cody Riley are coming back yet. Hopefully they're back. If they are, I would love to see Mick Cronin run them both together, especially since Mac now has his red shirt burned. I want to see him play a little bit more, and that opens up opportunities for Jalen Hill and Cody Riley to play together. I mean, they should be blowing out teams like Washington and Washington State. We already saw them blow out Washington State, but that Washington game was too close. Everyone called it a trap game. Everyone thought it would be a trap game. UCLA knew it would be a trap game. Washington knew it would be a trap game. And it still was a trap game. It looked like UCLA was really down and out for especially the first half, but they came out in the second half, caught on fire, and were able to close things out. You have to go up there and beat each team by double digits, regain some confidence. If Cody Riley and Jalen Hill, one or both of them, aren't back, get your big guy some experience. Get Kenny some experience. Get Max some experience. And possibly, if you're running away with it, run a 5-out lineup. Run Jaime at the 5. Try to develop these lineups where you don't have to rely on your big guys so much. Obviously, big men are important in the college game. It's much better to shoot a layup than a three-pointer in the college game because these guys just aren't as accurate as professional players are, and that's okay. But at some point, develop and experiment with these new lineups, because who knows if later this year at USC, that's a key to victory. If this Oregon games ever get rescheduled, it's key to victory. Pac-12 tournament, key to victory might be trying something new and adapting with a Jaime Jaquez at 5 or just going full on 5-out.
Yeah, I think the lineups, like you said, are really up in the air. You don't know what you're going to be able to do. So I hope that Cronin and the coaching staff have a lot of different combinations, a lot of different rotations ready to use, whether it's against Washington or Washington State. Obviously, you don't want to play down to your opponent. That's kind of what UCLA did against Washington last time. But this is kind of a spot where you can experiment a little bit, maybe against Washington State because you beat them by 30 last time. Maybe that's when you run out different lineups and see what's around. They should win that game. They should win it easily. They won by 30 last time, and I expect the same this time. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but they should. I expect them, and anything less is kind of a disappointment. Washington, I think it could be another close game. Washington had another couple of victories recently. They're not a horrible team. Quade Green absolutely torched you last time. He had 25 points on 10 of 16 shooting. UCLA won that game, and that's while shooting 11% worse than Washington. Washington shot 52% from the field. UCLA shot 41%. That has to flip. I don't really know how UCLA can expect to win while consistently shooting in the low 40s, in the 30s like they did against USC. That's something that needs to change. They're obviously pretty good at closing out close games. They did so against Washington. They did so against Colorado, Utah, whatever. Stanford game was just one mishap of a play, and that's after a pretty good offensive possession that really got them the lead in overtime. So continue that reputation of playing well in close, tight games in those close moments. And let's see. I kind of want to see a big game out of Jaime Jaquez. He hasn't really had an explosion. I think this is his game. This is his weekend to put together at least one of those games. I want to see the offense flow through him. I want to see him have a quicker trigger on threes. He has a lot of pump fakes and step-ins off of those when he gets the ball open on the outside. I want to see him kind of have the same green light that Johnny Juzang did, even if he's not as pure of a shooter.
Yeah, and I'd be looking at those three-point guys, Johnny Juzang, Jake Kyman, David Singleton. They've got to start getting that form back. I mean, I don't remember last time they were up in the Pacific Northwest when playing in the Washington games. Jake Kyman went off. He had that amazing game. Look for him to do that again this weekend, or David Singleton. One of those two guys is going to come off the bench, light things up, and they'll pull away with both these games.
Yeah, like we said, we expect them to win both of these. They should win both of these. They're still tied for first place. They've lost 2 out of the last 3, and they've been pretty brutal losses. You should have beat Stanford, and you got destroyed by USC. But a few games ahead. We got a while until the conference tournament. I trust this team, and I guess we'll have to see what happens. So That's all we have today for this week's episode of Bruin Dash on Dash Sports TV. You can follow us on Twitter at Dash Sports TV. You can follow me at Sam Connon. You can follow Jack at Jack C. Perez. So thanks for watching. If you're watching live, if you're watching a rerun, make sure to tune in next Monday at 4 p.m. Pacific time for next week's live episode, breaking down these two Washington games and how they went and what lies ahead for the Bruins after that. So, Jack, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sam. I love being here with you every single week.
So tune in next week to get our thoughts on the Washington games. We'll be here every week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.